You just offended everyone in South Carolina. I'm like, oops.
Well, so, it is what it is. And you're going
It
to,
is, but yeah, screw 'em.
you're going to be Jim.
So,
But in school, you got a bunch of
exactly.
kids picking on you. You don't really
Oh,
know
yeah,
that
a
it's
little bit.
going
Yeah.
on. In elementary school, there's Foursquare and, things like that. Did you participate in those things? Or was that something that when you're talking about, I just didn't know, you didn't know?
You mean like a vision stuff?
Yeah, vision stuff.
So, I didn't know that I couldn't see what other, how do you know that you can't see what other people can see?
Right.
Like, I'm not sitting, often kids don't be like, let's have a vision test, buddy. Like, how clearly can you see that letter on the board? You're an adult, you know how to do that. When you're a kid, you don't. Why would you be any different than anyone else?
You literally grew up with zero victimhood. Zero.
I was, that's not necessarily true. When I was a kid, I hated like being picked on. Like, I wanted to beat the shit out of people. And there's one kid, I'll never forget his name, Koi Chu. Like, if I saw him now, I'd probably punch him in the face.
Wow.
He was a son of a bitch who, like, the grade below me, lived in the same neighborhood. He would always pick on me on the bus. I hated the guts. So, but, you have a choice whether you allow it to control your life throughout your whole life or just eventually just forgive them as the ignorant assholes that they are and just move on. You know what I mean? Like, I've had clients tell me, well, I don't know if I want a blind lawyer. And I said, look, I respect that.
Right.
Good. You know what? Go somewhere else. There's plenty of cases.
Right.
And I don't want any. And if someone said that to me, I do not. I run my own firm here. I respect that. I don't get angry about it or offended because I want them to trust their lawyer. All right. You're going into war. That's what litigation is. Whether criminal, I represent criminal clients or civil clients. It's war. Custody cases I do a lot of. They're going to try to do every damn thing they can to portray you as a piece of shit father or mother, to steal your kids away from you. Custody cases are brutal.
Do you think that it's an advantage for you?
Well, I think it is. But if something about me makes you nervous about me being your lawyer, I want you to tell me that.
Right.
Not getting offended. I can get other clients, believe me. So
let's go from elementary school. Let's move up. I mean, you can see at this point.
So
you can't see as good as everybody else, but you can see.
The text is bigger than like it is in middle school. I don't know why.
I never even thought about that. Literally, I never thought about the text being bigger in elementary, but it is.
Yeah, it is, yeah. So also I started a growth spurt around 6th grade. So they think that misshapen my eye that was, growing.
Right.
And so simultaneously when the text got smaller, my vision got worse. That's when they finally realized, holy shit, like he's like not being able to see the text. Because actually when it got smaller, I could not see it.
Wow.
I couldn't even see it to sound it out.
So how'd you deal with that?
But the biggest fear I had in elementary school was being called on to read out loud. Oh my God. Like when we had a substitute, whenever we would have a substitute, I was like terrified. See, they didn't know, don't call on Jim.
That's heartbreaking, actually, to think that there's a kid in a classroom that can't read. And when a substitute teacher comes, you're terrified of getting up because you can't read. I mean, I hope things in schools aren't that way today.
They are. But, I would imagine they are. I think they're a lot more accepting, though, towards disabilities. And we have a lot more techniques and we know a lot more about how disabilities affect students' ability to learn and so forth. But another thing was silent reading. Because I really could never read the book all that well. We'd have like silent reading. You're supposed to sit there and like read your book or whatever.
Right. Quiet time.
Damn books. Yeah, quiet time. Yeah.
So what did you do? I mean, how did the institution actually help you?
Stare at a book, and then I would wait till like someone else turned their page. I never knew how long it would take you to read a page. I don't know.
Wow.
Like,
yeah, not long, but
I don't know.
So you'd turn the page because you heard
other
pages turning. Wow.
Yeah, and then the guy next to me like elbowed me. I'm like, what? Like, why are you reading the Bible upside down? First of all, I'm not a religious person. I had no idea I had the Bible in my hand.
Right.
So, what are you going to say to that when you're like, fourth grade. And I looked at him like, well, of course I can read the Bible upside down, can't you? He's like, well, no. Like, yeah.
Well, dude, what else are you supposed to say, right?
Times. Yeah. And he was like, that's awesome. Like, damn right it is. And then when he wasn't looking, I flipped it around.
So I suppose at this point, your parents don't really know what to do.
Not in elementary school. No, they didn't. When I went to middle school, then they realized what the issue was. But you're in school.
Right.
Like next week you have a test. Following week you have a test. Or, school doesn't just stop just because we got to figure out how to get this kid so he can access materials.
Right.
So you got to, work fast, right? I mean, what do you, like Braille. I never learned Braille. You didn't have time.
Right.
If you're born blind, you can learn Braille. Because they know from day one, you have to learn Braille. I don't think Braille is all that useful because for like a 10-page book printed regularly, it'd be like 40 pages printed in Braille because the dots and stuff are so much bigger than actual letters.
Right.
But I wish I did know it because it makes things easier, like reading speeches. If I ever run, or when I run, I should say, for politics, or when I did debate in high school, or when I go up in front of a jury, I can't read anything. I can have a computer where I have some notes, one or two, but you can't have something read into your ear and be repeating it.
Right.
I've never been able to do that. I don't think anyone can do it.
So we're in middle school.
You've been on the radio.
Right. No, like, I get it.
When the producer talking in your ear, it kind of makes you stumble, and you kind of have to focus on what they said, and you talk.
Right. And
so,
it's the greats like us that can operate, talking and listening at the same time, and it's almost impossible.
Right. It is. It's almost impossible, even for us to do it.
Let me ask you this: you're in middle school. Yeah. You're hitting puberty. Okay, every human goes through puberty. And when you go through puberty, you start having interest in the opposite sex. What was that like for you in middle school
I could
going
still
into?
See enough to see the nice knockers.
Okay.
So,
so you were a typical boy.
Am I allowed to say that, knockers? Is that
No. You say,
allowed?
hey, this is real life on this podcast.
No, I can see well enough to see that. And believe me, I looked up enough porn when I was a teenager. Like, man, I might not be able to do this in the future, so I might well look at it all now.
So, did the stigma with the glasses and the special education, did that hurt you in that area?
Life was not my dating life wasn't all that good.
It wasn't.
Until I was older. But I was a scrawny kid. I was, you see me now. I was freaking like rail, like really thin. It's ridiculous. I had these big ass ears, big glasses. That was some ugly dude. I was tall, but
it's like alfalfa.
Tall and really skinny.
Tall and skinny. Alfalfa Jim Lockwood.
Do I with that?
I said alfalfa Jim Lockwood.
Oh no, absolutely. 100%, yeah. So the way we modified the material starting out was enlarging it. Like a regular piece of paper, it would be like 13 by 19 inches.
Okay.
That's how big the paper would be. And I could see that. And I started from regular mechanical pencil to like 0.9 lead pencils.
And
then
that helped.
That was okay for like 6th and 7th grade. 8th grade, vision went down a little bit more. We got a little bigger paper, and we did it on yellow paper. And the contrast, I don't know why, but the contrast between the black print and the yellow paper was better. Computer-wise, back then we were starting to use computer. I used something called Zoom Text, and it's a program that essentially magnifies the monitor. So you're only looking at a certain percentage of the monitor. And whenever you move your mouse, the monitor moves to a different area of the screen. I would change to high contrast, so the background was black and the letters were white or yellow. But eventually, middle of high school, that got to the point where I couldn't see it, so we did scanning. My dad, by this time, you can do it on that if you want, but he had muscular dystrophy. And by this time, freshman year, sophomore year, he had gone on medical disability, and he would buy the textbooks cut the binding off the back of the textbooks and scan in the textbook into the scanner. And then I had software with a laptop I brought to school that would read it out loud. And that's how I gained access to textbooks. Back then, you didn't have digital textbooks at all. So you had to make them.
So your father literally
yeah.
Was giving everything he had, everything that he could do.
Oh, yeah. No,
he was doing.
He would do it like we would buy the books a week before school started, and that's all he would do.
That's
and then,
amazing.
From what I remember of high school, I think you had different classes in the second semester, or maybe that was college, I don't know. But, you get different material. I'd have to scan it in.
So you go through high school.
Work on stuff. Yeah.
At what point in high school were you legally blind, like you couldn't see anymore?
Couldn't see as far as what legally blind is. 2200 or 2400. I forget which one it is. But still at that level, you can see certain things. You can't see the combination on your locker, but you can see the lights on the ceiling.
Okay.
That's how I would walk down the center of the hallway. Is I'd look up and they're big fluorescent lights, rectangles, and they're in the center of the hallway, so you can kind of,
So there's a lot of things. I mean,
is.
You've said a few things here that people don't even think about, like, being terrified to get up and speak because a teacher might call on you because you can't read in there, to have to walk down the hallway and use the lights above you kind of as a map because you might run into somebody. You might run into the wall.
I ran into people all the time. It was mostly be sure I don't just go diagonally through the hallway into someone's locker.
Okay, so I got to ask this, and you got to be honest.
Yeah.
Did you ever run into a girl that you knew was the girl that was like hot?
Okay, so I'm down the hallway, okay, and I'm like, sometimes I would feel where the door was,
right?
So I reach out and I plant my hand directly on this woman's chest. I mean, if I was, Fred the Fondler.
I mean, it's not funny, but it's funny. You know what I'm saying? It
was humiliating at the time, but also I'm also 16, 15. I'm like, nice. Right. I didn't mean to.
Right.
I didn't feel like, yeah, baby.
Yeah, no. Don't get me wrong, folks. He didn't do it on purpose. He didn't stick his.
No, I didn't. Yeah. No, I'm feeling. I'm reaching out because I could tell. You can tell, or at least back then. I don't know if they redone the school or not, but down the hallway in between classrooms, there's lockers on either side of the hallway, and I had 3,000 people. Big high school, okay? Right? Not some little thing. But when you get to the classroom, there's usually a classroom on either side, 4 classrooms, 2 next to one another, 2 on either side of the hallway. So the lights on the ceiling, I forget what they did, but they either had a break in them or they branched out into 2 lines or something. So I could tell, that's where the doors are. Let me reach out and make sure the door is not open so I don't slam my face into an edge of a door.
Right.
Right? The door's halfway open. I still have this problem. If someone opens the door for me and my guide dog, if she can go, she might go, and I'll face plant into the edge of the door. She doesn't do it often, but it's a possibility.
So you're there in high school, and you're doing this, and you have all these extra things that you're doing. People don't really know it. They know, hey, there's Jim. He has a hard time seeing. When did it come to the point that you just couldn't do it anymore? And at that point, did your parents or your teachers or anything ever have a conversation with you and say, well, like Forrest Gump, my boy ain't going to learn tread tires. Did you ever have that conversation?
No, not really. I went to space camp when I was in 6th grade. It was a space camp designed for people with vision impairments. And I was one of the worst vision impairments there. I got completely made fun of. You're blind. I'm like, so are you, asshole. What are you calling me?
Right.
Good Lord. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So and I'll say it. I don't care. Sometimes I get frustrated with blind people who are blind.
Okay.
Don't let it control your life. I had an option. They asked me, my parents, you want to go to school for the blind? Absolutely not. No. I don't want to go. And it works for some kids, okay?
Right.
Nothing's wrong with it. They have great facilities there. My life probably would have been a hell of a lot easier because this whole school in Indiana, in Indianapolis and other states have them too.